from the dead.
Read the Bible, you'll find out that God's not too happy with what's going on around us.
Redeem the time, because the days are evil.
The Bible has not changed.
Boldly proclaim the restoration and preservation of Christian values in America.
Satan has brainwashed a whole nation.
As goes the church, so goes the nation.
Nobody's convicted of anything anymore.
And now, here's Last Call with your host, B.J. Edwards.
Look around. I can't see. I don't know what screen I got up here.
We got
okay. The government big enough to give you everything you want is strong enough to take everything you have. Take note. Take note. Speaking of taking a note, look around you. Look out the window. Go into the highways and the byways, into the villages, and what do you see? Welcome to George Orwell's world, folks.
Here we are.
It's just absolutely amazing. I want to talk about those two young men, those two young souls in Nevada. And we got a great guest coming up the second hour, Major Sam Sigoloff, Dr. Sam Sigoloff. Oh, my goodness. But there are more of them. Just incredible. Look, here's a problem, and I was thinking about this morning before I went into the show. He who controls the information controls the world. All right? He who controls the information controls the world. How do we combat that? Educational systems. They have your children 5 days a week for hours. And then in the summertime, they associate with those same students. And it's confirmed by the news media and politicians. But the news media is the key. If we can counteract that, we're in business. So how do we do that? Well, we form our own stations, right? Our own ABCs, NBCs, CNNs, etc. Guess what happens once we start becoming effective? They'll take you down. And I mean from the internet. They control the internet. I'm not talking about Facebook. I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about YouTube. You'll lose your access to the internet. They will take you down. So now what do? We're hopeless, right? We have no hope. Come on. What's your suggestion?
shortwave radio.
Okay, shortwave. Not everybody can have a shortwave radio. It's not convenient. We're not used to that. There's going to be interruptions on that. Yes, that is part of it. That's not I'm not nixing that totally. What one entity? You remember Ronald Reagan, and you remember the phrase bully pulpit?
Bully puppet.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Pulpit. Yeah.
What would happen if the pulpit started being your news and information resource? Not just on Sundays, maybe every week if it's necessary. You know, when you're taking your kids there, with your homeschool kids there for a homeschool class, drop them off and then listen to the media director for the local church. Got to think outside the box, folks. I don't know whether they work or not, but if we don't try it, I know it won't work.
I know that on our current issue 1 that we're worried about here in Ohio, that issue 1, the way it's spelled out on the ballot doesn't look as horrible to some people. I mean, abortion always looks bad to Christians. But anyway, I presented that information to our pastor, and he's taking it and looking at it and going to provide that information to the congregation.
I hope, Mr. Anderson, he does it in a family matter.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Family matter.
Yep.
Well, yeah, the parental rights.
Yep. There's two issues here. In Ohio, there's an amendment that can be passed that would basically be carte blanche for abortion. No matter what age you are, the government will come in, or doctors will come in, or the school will come in, and they'll take your child and they'll allow them to have an abortion or even change their sex. Yeah, they can do that. There's no restriction on that. It just says reproductive right. What does that mean? I'm a guy. I want to be a woman. I get reproductive rights, right? What did God?
It's open-ended.
Yep.
It's open-ended. And if you're a lawyer, you can find a way to make it open those doors to take kids right away from the parents.
It is incredible what we're doing to our children. It is absolutely incredible. And by the way, we're going to have to change some supervisors and some quote unquote leaders in our society today. The leaders that always want to play defense. They have one song, they sing it all the time. They don't know how to sing in a different tune, and they don't know how to play with others in the orchestra. That has to change. We have to have somebody that's more open-minded. Trust me, we've got to do that, or we are losing. Now, what does that mean for you individually? Again, always try to start this in the family. Have it like we were talking about issue 1. Have a conversation with the family about, or your son or your daughter or your grandson or granddaughter, whoever. Tell them what this is really about on issue 1. And it is about, like everything else, is attacking the family. If you take a look, divide time into segments of 10. How much time do we spend talking about the family? How much time do we spend talking about the church, the state? How much time do we spend on CRT, borders, public education, global warming? Look at all the things we talk about, and look at the one. And I'm sorry, this is it. The one thing that we talk about every now and then. If you go to a conference this weekend or this coming weekend, if you go to a conference, how many of those speakers are going to talk about the family? How many are dedicated to the family? Or how many are dedicated to treating symptoms? Or they have their own solution outside of the family? These kids in Nevada, that is a result of us, this nation. I'm not taking culpability away from them, and they should be punished. But if we continue to punish these kids and we don't do anything to avoid making more of them, who's at fault here? Who's at fault here? This is what these kids did. We're talking about 2 teens hit a bicyclist. It was a hit and run, 18 and 16. Las Vegas. The evidence shows that teens were responsible for at least 3 hit and run incidents that morning of August 14th, including the crash that killed the cyclist Andres Andy Provost White and a retired former police chief from the Los Angeles area city of Bell. I've said it would be. We're going to play a clip and get that clip ready, Mr. Anderson, of these kids running into this bicyclist. And I would love to have 10 clips of racial arsonists, which is what they are. You name them, they're racial arsonists. On the news media, Black Lives Matter, doesn't make any difference. What they're telling these kids, because they're not white, is because Whitey is pressing them and holding them back. So why would they be concerned about returning the favor? Go ahead, Mr. Anderson.
All right, go. Go. Keep me moving. Stop talking. Stop. Ready? Yeah. Knocked out. Get out of here.
Because who do we have to blame here? We've got 2 non-white teens. Oh, by the way, fatherless teens. We're not going to talk about the family. We're going to talk about how we want to lock them up and throw away the key, right? Is that what we're supposed to do here? Lock up society's problems? I'm sorry. I am annoyed as a dickens about why we're allowing this to, why we're encouraging this to happen. And we are encouraging this to happen. We stick them in a government-run school, tell them, number one, that life has no meaning, evolution is fact, morals are relative, man, not God, is the measure of all things, and the state's your daddy. We also tell them that because of your skin color, you're being denied. Envy, hate. We need to do something to change that. And then they go out. They have no, folks, where you learn authority is in the family. God, Jesus Christ, man, woman, children. That's the family authority. Father's been taken out of this. God's not even thought of or even maybe even talked about. So we have kids that have become their own authority, or maybe the daddies become the authority, or maybe the educational systems become the authority, or the news media has become the authority, or the church. A lot of churches reinforce this white rage, white madness, white discrimination. Yeah, I'm white. Yeah, folks.
You are? I never noticed.
I'm not riding my bicycle anymore, that's for sure. I'm sorry. I'm just so upset with us that we are not doing anything about this. We need to take a look back and say, okay, how did this happen? Why did this happen? If this were vice versa, and you've heard it, if this were two white guys in a car and that was a black on the, or a Mexican on the bike, you couldn't hear enough of this. The race baiters, the race arsonists would be at it 24/7, making sure that we create yet more kids that are going to do the same thing because they're justified in doing so, right? I'm upset with us. I'm upset with me. We have to do something about this. We have to stop this insanity. Yeah, they're going to go to jail, and they're probably going to go to jail for the rest of their life. You know what? When they go to jail, we ought to throw their father in jail too. Wait. What about Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton? You want to throw them in jail as well? Huh?
They're insiders.
Complicit? You know, when you rob a bank, somebody drives the car. Well, that's what Jesse and Al are doing. They're driving the car. Or look at CNN and what they're talking about. We should be as upset about the society that has created an environment where these kids do what they do. I'm not excusing them, okay? And I'm not excusing us. This is our problem. America. According to the police, the teenagers first struck a 72-year-old bicyclist while in a stolen Hyundai sedan, drove away, crashed into a Toyota Corolla, and drove again away before striking the 64-year-old. You remember Stephen Paddock? Huh? Thinking of Las Vegas. Remember Stephen Paddock, Mr. Anderson?
He was shooting people from a window.
32nd floor of the Mandalay Hotel. He killed 58, by the way, in Las Vegas. He killed 58 people.
What? I didn't realize it was that high a number. Yep. I mean, any number is high enough.
Injured 200.
Oh, my goodness.
Injured 200.
Yeah, it was a concert thing going on. He was.
Yep. Stephen Paddock, by the way, fatherless. Stephen Paddock tried to use athletics. He tried to use sex. He tried to use gambling. Some tried to use drugs. He tried anything and everything. They still don't know why Stephen Paddock did this. I have a theory that we created the Stephen Paddock. We helped create this insanity. You know, 23 million, 45% of all Americans age 18 to 29 are living with family. And 40% of those families are fatherless. That's roughly the same level as 1940s. We don't teach them independence. We teach them dependence, and specifically dependence on the government. Boy, am I fired up this morning. We're going to talk about the family. We've got a video we're going to show during the next segment. And if I can, Mr. Anderson, I'm going to break into it every now and then. If not, we can play it all the way through. But as a society, we have really dropped the ball. And we're paying dearly for it. Columbine, you can think of the examples of children who desperately, and I can speak from personal experience, are trying to fill that fatherless gap. And all we do is aggravate it. Absolutely amazing. BJ Edwards along, Mr. Anderson. This is your last call.
You want to do that commercial now?
No, we'll wait. Just do the regular commercial.
The regular one.
Yeah.
Last call with BJ Edwards. Real talk about real life.
Myra, good morning to you.
She's muted.
Yeah, you're muted, Myra. I don't know how many children that Myra deals with on a daily basis, if at all, that are a result of our social insanity. What do you think about what I said, Myra?
Well, you're right on target. You are coming against evil and exposing it, and that's what we're commanded to do. So, good job. And yes, I work with children as a mental health therapist, and they are indoctrinated by the school system and the way education is being set up. And but God's power is so much bigger that in faith we know that they will come along, and a change is coming, but people have to be willing to do the change, and that's another thing.
No, that is the key, and that takes admitting that you're wrong, admitting that you maybe were a failure in the past. There's a pride issue there. And folks, I'm sorry, and I'm going to let Myra read a verse for us, but I'm sorry, folks. Go ahead and read the verse first, and then I'll.
Then you'll rant.
Yeah.
Yes, I will be delighted. We bind the enemy that is coming against this nation and this broadcast. And Holy Spirit, make yourself comfortable. Like JR says, please grab a chair, join us, have a discussion with us. We're delighted to have you in the house. And it is written, John 1:1-5. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The same was in the beginning with God. All things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. In him was life, and life was the light of men. And the light shineth in darkness, and the darkness comprehended it not. Hallelujah. And I want to give credit to Martin, who helped me come up with this Bible verse today, and my sister Betty and Tom also, who inspire me to keep moving on.
Sounds like a team. So you can take a chair, but I'm going to kick it out from underneath you. Okay. I'm sorry. I'm going to do that. I'm grieving over what happened in Nevada. And I'm grieving because what happened to the families, both sides, and the children. And I'm grieving because we're probably just going to write this off, try to forget it, and go back to business, what we're doing before. Pay those taxes for your government-run schools. Don't homeschool. You don't have time. You know, there's a lot of people out there. If I would ask them the question, if you had it to do all over again, would you have put your child in public schools, government-run indoctrination centers? Would you? How much would you pay? How much would you pay now to get your child back? Because you did lose him. How much would you pay? It's priceless, isn't it? Bet your sweet Bibby. Anybody wants in, just unmute yourself. Go ahead, Mr.
Well, my
Anderson.
little comment, retired teacher, but what I think is really, really important is for parents to realize they think schools are like it was when they were there.
Yeah.
A lot of them. They have these memories. Well, school isn't that bad. They have no idea what it's like. And we had some ideas at one time too about parents and grandparents volunteering and getting in the school building
Yep.
and learning what it's like to be in a public school in 2023, because it's not your grandpa's school anymore. It's a lot different world, that institution that kids spend 7-8 hours a day in.
I think Martin wants to come in. And Roger, I don't know. I'm sorry, James Bond. I don't know whether you want in or not.
He's unmuted.
Okay. We'll let you in after we get Martin. Martin, go ahead, please. I'm sorry, Mr. Anderson. Would you bring him in?
Yeah, fine. There he is.
Hey,
Martin,
BJ. Thank you once again for having me. It's always a great opportunity to contribute to your program. I just have a question for our licensed mental health provider, Miss Myra Schneider. Has she seen a difference in the children who have a mom and dad in the home as opposed to the ones who just have a single parent in the home? If she has any information on that in her line of work.
I'll add that Myra to it. And by the way, this isn't the Myra and BJ show. This is BJ's show, okay? And Mr. Anderson. Go ahead, Myra.
Yes. Thank you, Brother Buskman. And yes, there's a difference. There's more stability in the homes, even when both parents don't get along and there's fighting in between or discussions or whatnot. There's still more stability.
Yeah.
They know there's a mom and a dad, and whenever, especially now with the LGBTQ education, they have a framework and a something in reference to work on when they see a mom and a dad at home.
Amen.
Hallelujah.
I'm going to bring Roger in as well. Let's just fill the place up.
Jim, can you hear me?
We can. It's BJ.
Oh, BJ, I'm so sorry. I agree with Myra. All the studies show that
You're a lawyer.
Where there's mother and father.
You see this stuff as a lawyer. You see this.
Oh, all the time. But yeah, where there's a mother and father at home functioning, even if that marriage is not perfect, the statistics and the data all show that the children do better. When you have 80% of the Black American community with no father at home, when you have 40% of the hillbilly families not with nobody home, you're just going to have trouble. But my comment is about the schools a little bit, is that the other problem you have with the whole government schools is, I hear this comment, well, we're kind of in the country. We're not in the big city. We're kind of out in the country. Well, it's foolishness, because the teachers are coming from the colleges that are teaching them the diversity crap that's being thrown at our kids. And then they have to join the Ohio Education Union or Association or cult. And so they're a member of that to get any benefit for whatever they need benefits for. So this idea that, well, we're kind of out in the country and it really doesn't affect us is gibberish.
I get it. Thank you, Roger. We got way too many people. Go ahead, Martin. I think you want to say something.
Well, I was just going to say that growing up I was in a divorced home, but I did have a stepfather in the house. And though he wasn't the greatest, I mean, there was a sense of mother and father that I and my brothers grew up with. So, speaking in person for myself, I did some rotten, awful stuff. I praise God for His grace, but I'm not running in a car looking for innocent people on their bicycles to hit. So something went right. But thanks, BJ, for your time. I'll mute myself, sir.
But you aren't charged up. Go. Yeah, please do. You aren't charged up like a certain segment of our society is. They've been targeted, folks. They've been, and it's been successful. Look at the results. Look at the results. Just stating the facts, folks. Call me whatever you want to call me. Just stating the facts. You aren't going to resolve this issue by criticizing me.
Just the facts, ma'am.
Yeah.
Just the facts.
You aren't going to do that. It's not going to work. It's not going to work. We're going to play a video coming out of the next break, and it's about the family, and it kind of explains a little bit more or more detail what we're experiencing here. And during the break, we're going to have a clip from the Babylon Bee. Only this is not humor. This is good stuff from the Babylon Bee. They don't pay me for this. They don't pay me to advertise this, but I see it as a good thing. And these are some pretty sharp people.
But we're not rejecting any donation they might make.
Yeah. Like to get them on the show. Love to have them on the show, folks. You're not going to. You hear this all the time. You're not going to see anything like this out there anywhere. There's children's books that strengthen families, trusted by parents and grandparents, buildable series jam-packed with adventure, world-class illustrations, character kids fall in love with.
Back in there.
Yeah, go ahead. Put me back.
Oh, there it is.
I got a video I want to play, and I may comment on it from time to time. But I saw this, and I went, yeah. I saw this on Coach Dave's show. That's where I found it, on Coach Dave Live. I found it on his show. I found it to be very instructional. But keep in mind, when you go to these meetings that you pay $150 for or $35 for, very seldom will you find somebody like this in these meetings. Everybody's there trying to treat symptoms or get the right person elected. Folks, that ain't working. It ain't working because we don't deserve it. We've not created an environment where Christian thoughts, ideals, and leaders can get traction in the marketplace of ideas. That's up to us, those that know. Am I yelling a lot, Mr. Swan? I'm just.
You're yelling a lot.
Yeah. I'm really upset about these kids. I really am. It's a shame. It's a shame what's going to happen to them. And rightfully so, but it's a shame. And if we don't, oh man, if we don't ask for forgiveness, and that's part of the process, recognizing that you're an alcoholic, recognizing that you're this and the other. You have to recognize that first. Recognize that you're the problem, and then take it from there. Go ahead and start that clip, if you would, Mr. Anderson. BJ Edwards, along with Mr. Anderson, your last call. Tell your friends about us.
I hope I got the right one.
Okay. Well, we'll find out shortly.
Every single time you see this, There's no father. There's no man in.
So what?
Yeah, I'm gonna say go ahead with it, and then we can go to break, and then we can bring the other one up. But if that's still there, or you got the other one up, doesn't make any difference.
I am not finding that. I'll go with this one and see if I can find it. Oh, I don't know.
It's that 8-minute long one. Benny, did you want to say something? Okay. I had a hello question mark at 9:28. Folks, this is so important.
I'm sorry, I am not finding it. You want to go with that one?
Yeah, we're gonna have to.
It's only 2 minutes. But...
Yeah.
Every single time you see this, there's no father. There's no man in the house. This is the biggest problem in this country. The lack of fathers is truly the biggest problem in this country. Any problem we point to, whether it's cultural, crime, whatever, lack of fathers. That's what it comes down to. Neighbors reported witnessing the children left alone for extended periods of time. The mother said that she could not find childcare while she worked. She pleaded guilty to gross misdemeanor child abuse. She later withdrew her plea after she successfully completed terms of probation and received a conviction for misdemeanor disorderly conduct. Both teens are expected to be moved to the adult jail in downtown Las Vegas within the next 24 hours. Yeah, so again, you guys seen that, you heard that. Just again, another story about savages who committed a crime, an act of violence. In this case, they killed somebody. And then come to find out they were raised in typical single mother households with no father. They have a long rap sheet of crimes showing that they probably should have been in jail. Okay, probably should not have been out on the streets. And, you know, as the result of that, eventually somebody loses their life because we are not locking up criminals and throwing away the kid. Now, again, in this situation right here, I hope that they receive the maximum punishment. I have no sympathy for them. I hope that they get life, okay, if they decide to go with life. Again, there's some other options in Nevada as well, too, in regards to the punishment they can face. But if they go with life in prison, no parole. No parole. They don't need to see the light of day ever again. They made an adult decision, so now they have to face the adult consequences. They knew exactly what they was doing. They did it multiple times, and to the point where, again, a person got killed. And now, again, of course, you're going to have people that are going to come out here and just going to boo-hoo, whine, and cry. The mother's not going to take responsibility, okay? But again, if these children, these kids, had a father in the home, had a man in their life, I guarantee you, you don't see this happening. So, hey, you know, I don't feel bad for them. The justice system will do their thing, and I hope they never see the light of day again. Rest in peace to the retired police officer that lost his life. Again, gone too soon. Andreas Prost, again, rest in peace. At least it seems like in this case, hopefully justice will be served. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective.
Yeah, that's okay. Mr. Anderson found the video. I'm going to take a break. I'll hit the break thing, Mr. Anderson. But before we take a break, we talked about homeroom moms, the program, which is a great program. Got it started in the East Coast. Great program where parents get involved in the classroom. They see what's going on in the halls. Based upon what I said this morning, maybe we ought to have a program called Jailhouse Parents. Send the parents to jail with the kids. Just saying. No, I know. Sometimes it's going to happen anyway. Hey, when we come back, we're going to start that video I talked about earlier. I think it's very informative and something that should be at every speech that you go to, folks. Every speech.
Last Call with BJ Edwards. Real talk about real life.
and you have folks talking about the border. You have folks talking about the church. You have folks talking about this, that, and the other. And then somebody gets up and they start this conversation. Go ahead, Mr. Anderson.
I got to start it over here.
Oh, okay. Jailhouse parents. Huh? What do you think? Yeah, you'll love the idea, right? Oh, crazy times, crazy times. Are we ready, Mr. Anderson, you think? We're having pregnant pauses here, Mr. Anderson.
I realize that. It's not good business, is it?
No, it isn't. It isn't. By the way, if we judge another presuming their guilt and ask for punishment to befall them, we are with guile or guilt. If we are with guile or guilt, that means if we have evilly inspired deeds in our own past that have yet to be expunged, judgment and punishment will return to us to expunge them by the same law of liberty we put through prayer to cure another of the same thing. Watch what you're throwing. Got it?
I think so.
Go for it. Go for it.
Why no sound? We're not getting sound, are we?
No, we're not. No, we're not.
That's not right.
Yep. So when you talk about the family, you need to say that you need to indicate that it is the first institution that was created for the benefit of man. And that wasn't by accident. It was not by accident. It was purposeful. It is the foundation of all society. And whatever it be, communism, Marxism, secularism, humanism, doesn't make any difference. They have to go after the family. Yeah, the church too. But if the family is there, it can be the foundation of the church. If the family isn't there, you can't build a church. It isn't going to happen. You don't have Adam and Steve, right? And that's very important to understand. And in the family, you have a certain order. I mentioned it earlier, Ephesians 5's God, Jesus Christ, man, woman, children. You learn authority, which, by the way, I think is one of those natural laws that we're born with, that we look for authority. We look for authority. And if it's not there, we're still looking for it. In my own personal case, I grew up in a very broken home. My father he was there, but unfortunately he was a bad example. And he didn't want anything to do with me at all. I'm surprised he didn't drop me off on the side of the road and drive away. It was that kind of a wonderful relationship. So I can say, well, I had a father in my home, so what's the problem? Anyway, he used to beat the living daylights out of my mom. He was an abuser. I heard all kinds of language and I heard all kinds of shoving around. And I think I've said before that I dedicate this show to my mother, who was a Christian, had me in church on Sunday and in choir on Wednesdays. And anyway, when I left the house, even when I was in the house, I can remember talking to a neighbor when I was, I think 8, 9, 10 years old. And I wanted my neighbor, I liked the guy. I saw him. He was a man. I wanted him to adopt me. And I even asked him to. And I was desperate. I wanted a father. But that didn't happen. So when I got out of the home, and think about these kids. When I got away from the home, I would do anything. Sports kind of helped fill a little bit of that gap. Okay, when I was growing up, I was fairly good in athletics. That was kind of a blessing to me. But after I got out of school, then how was I going to fill that? Because sports basically ended at that time. So I picked up drinking and sex. And some folks pick up gangs. And some young kids will grab their buddy, go out in the car driving, and be mischievous. To a deadly point, by the way, to a deadly point. I'm not saying that if you grow up in a perfect home, that you're guaranteed, chances are better that you're going to do okay, but that you're guaranteed that anything's going to happen good. You got the Menendez brothers, very wealthy home, killed their parents. So it's no guarantee. But if you want to talk in terms of probabilities, yes? No?
Comments.
Okay, yeah, I'll let Tom comment here in a moment. But if you want to talk in terms of probabilities, that is critical. I mean, it's by design. It's a natural law. Gosh, I wish you'd all pick up on those natural laws. The Bible records them, folks. It records them. The 10 Commandments. By the way, thou shalt have no other gods. Those gods can include yourself. Let's call it the God of nature. The laws of nature and nature's God, like the founding fathers, right? They knew what they were talking about. They knew the connection between natural laws, physical and spiritual, and human beings here on planet Earth. Yeah, applies to animals as well. Not so much spiritual as I can understand it. But we have to understand, if when you try to have a conversation with somebody and you start trying to beat them up the head with the Bible, the natural man receiveth not the things of the Spirit, it's foolishness unto them. We need to learn, in essence, learn to speak in tongues. You can yell in tongues, but if you try to beat them upside the head with the Bible, you're gonna have a success or two, like the exceptions to the family. But I think for the most part, you need to speak in tongues, and I speak in natural tongues. I remember the gay couple that I talked with, and they accused me of beating them up the side of the head with the Bible. And I'm going, no, your problem's not with me. Your problem's with nature. Nature doesn't lie, and it doesn't hide itself. It's there all the time. And no, I'm not saying ignore the Bible. Nature can be a bridge to the Bible. It can be a foundation to help people understand that what they're looking at in the Bible is a recording of what they see in society. I mean, I came to this realization by trying to prove the Bible wrong. And what I was doing was I was trying to prove what? Nature wrong. How do you prove something wrong in print? What do you compare it to? You compare it to what you see, right? You see in society.
I can try the video again through Busman.
Okay. Well, let's Tom wanted to say something, then we'll try it through Busman. Go ahead, Tom. Thanks.
Hey, BJ, you're absolutely right. We've got a problem with fatherlessness in the home. There's also other dynamics that could be causing this too, for our kids to go astray. You could have, as you mentioned, a father who's there but's checked out, not living up to his responsibility. You can also have a situation where you've got a mother and a dad that are not seeing eye to eye. Maybe one of the spouses is undermining the other spouse. A spouse may be trying to teach a child conservative Christian values, and the other parent is undermining all that, and the kid goes with the other parent.
Been there, done that.
You can also have the situation where both parents are doing everything as correctly as they can, teaching conservative Christian values, and the children just reject it. So you can't let the kids off the hook necessarily. They could be going astray as well. Part of the problem, I think, in the society is the kids are more into social media than ever before. So they have a larger opportunity to hear viewpoints other than those of their parents. And, not just at school with the teachers, but also when they're online so much. So that is a battle that we as parents have to fight, is to, try to be the main influence in our children's life. And give them examples of maybe how we strayed when we were younger, like you're talking about.
Yeah.
And saying, hey, when we were youthful, we did things wrong. But now as we're older, we're a little bit wiser. We see the world differently. And we see the destructive path that you can go down if you hate. And when you're talking about the way that the left particularly has been fomenting so much hate in our society to get those young men to want to hit a bicycler like that, because they've been told, that there's so much racism going on in the country.
Yeah,
we see that hate in other areas as well. I was out with a sign again yesterday with basically saying, don't take the jab and no mask, because I see the tyranny starting to come back maybe this fall of wanting us to mask up and jab up again.
Oh yeah.
And of the cars that were out there, about 20% of the cars still hated me. They shouted at me. We're very upset. There was the propaganda has fomented so much hate in them against the unvaccinated, even 3 years, 2 to 3 years later, after this whole thing, took place,
Yep.
that they still hate. It's been inbred in them. So that's another example of how propaganda can have a tremendous impact, at least on some members of society, to make them foment so much hate towards somebody else.
Brainwashing, folks. It's incredible. And what you first hear, kids get it in school, right? Hey, I think we're going to try to, thank you, Tom. I think we're going to try to play that video again. You want to try it first, Mr. Anderson, or do you want Mr. Martin to do so?
I got to add it. So
You got to add it?
I got to add it.
Okay. I don't know what that means, but
I added it.
okay.
So Mr. Busman has to play it.
All right, Mr. Busman, can you go
Here
ahead?
are the satanic six. These are the big cultural crises that we're dealing with in our day. Number one, men are encouraged to be boys or girls, but not men. When my daughters were little, they would dress up like princesses. Now we're telling fathers to do the same thing. It's a broken, corrupt culture. And for you young men, they're trying to keep you in adolescence and childhood and boyhood as long as they possibly can, so that you're overmothered, underfathered, dependent on the government, broken, and ultimately no longer a productive member of society. Number two, men are not launching. How many of you guys are the young guys? You're in your 20s? Your whole generation is a failure launch situation. Here's what the research tells us. How many of you are dads and you've got a son, right? How many of you? You're looking at the world and you're saying, okay, is my son going to be able to launch? We are going to need to help him. Because here's what's going on statistically. This is from CNBC, and it comes from the Pew Research report. Young adults in the U.S. are taking longer to reach key life milestones that impact finances compared to 4 decades ago. In 2021, adults who were 21 were less likely to have a full-time job, be financially independent, living on their own or married, or have children than their predecessors from the 1980s. Here's what I'm telling you. The generation today is the least impressive and the worst launching generation of men in the history of the United States of America. Waiting longer to marry, waiting longer to leave home, waiting longer to have a job, with no intention or plan of ever launching. And what the result is, what we have now is we have a record number of overmothered, underfathered men. And it takes a man to raise a man. They tell us that masculinity is adopted and adapted from a father figure in your life. And what we've got a generation of young men. And I'm not saying this to beat you young men down, but to build you up. I speak to you with the heart of a father. I've got my sons are here tonight. And you men need to know that if you just go with the cultural stream, you will be a very unimpressive man for the rest of your life. And ultimately what we're seeing young guys are not launching. They're not getting married, having children, becoming husbands and fathers, and launching careers and businesses. What are they doing? They're staying at home. They're living with their mother until their 30s. They're playing video games. They're vaping. They're ordering food delivered to the house because they're too lazy to even go out and get it for themselves. And ultimately, they're addicted to pornography or alcohol or legalized drug use, and they're just sitting around and vaping all day. We've taken men who are at the strength in their life and in that season when they should have the greatest vision for their future, and we have broken them and we have sidelined them. Number three, men are not working. It's called not in labor force. A record 7 million men ages 25 to 54 are not working or looking for work. Okay. What that is that's a whole generation of guys who are in their 20s, let's say, and they're not working and they're not looking for work. If you're an older man, how many of you don't even have a category for this? If you're a single guy, you should have at least 2 jobs. Okay, for 2 reasons. You have the energy, and if you don't have a wife, you have nowhere to put it, so you may as well go get 2 jobs. Just something to pray about. But nonetheless, the way this works is we've got a whole generation of men that we have created to be dependent and not to have them mature so that others can depend on them. And in addition, men are not marrying. 40% of millennials and Gen Z, ages 18 to 42, don't believe in marriage. They think it's an antiquated, outdated institution. And here's what you need to know. The whole world is built by men who have women and children to feed. The reason that a man gets out of bed and goes and works a job, pursues a career, takes a chance, launches a company, he's got a woman that he loves and children with his last name, and he feels this God-given level of responsibility to provide for them. As soon as you take away a wife and children, you take away the motivation for a man to carry the full responsibility that God intends for him to carry as a man. Furthermore, men are marrying far later than ever. The average guy today is well into his 30s by the time that he does have his first marriage. And what we see as well, 25% of 40-year-old men in America have never married. 25% of, remember that show, The 40-Year-Old Virgin? These guys aren't all virgins. I'm just telling you how this is working. So men are not marrying, but what are they doing? They're living and sleeping with multiple women with no intention of ever marrying. And so what you've got as well, you've got an entire generation that are cohabitating. And now what you're starting to see is two things happen. Women who go to college, which men don't, and women who are in the workforce, which men aren't, are having a hard time finding a man to marry. So they're doing one of two things. The younger women are marrying the older men, the dirty old guys who can afford it. Or number two, they're becoming lesbians. The whole trend toward transgenderism and lesbianism is in large part a number of women who would like to get married, but they can't find a man, so they decide to be a lesbian. And then number five, men are not fathering. 1 in 4 young adults today are saying that they are not going to have children. And what you're seeing is, for the first time in our nation's history, the majority of children born to women 30 and under, those children grow up with no father in the home. The majority of children at some point in their lifetime have no father or father figure in their home. And now the next generation of men, 25% of young men are saying, I have no intention of ever having a child. And then lastly, and I will say this as well, many men
transgender. It's made very, very cool through the media.
Many men don't want to have children because they don't want the responsibility. And number two, many men who have children don't carry that responsibility. I'll give you some statistics. 1 in 4 children today in our country have no father in the home. That's 18 million children have no father in the home. The majority of the homes are single mothers, not single fathers. And you just need to know this. If a kid grows up in America, they are 300% more likely to not have a father than the other nations on the earth. Technically, statistically, this would be one of the worst countries in the world to actually be born if you wanted to have a father. And so let me just tell you this. You men are a statistical anomaly and miracle. Like, some of you guys didn't know this, but going to work today made you special. Okay? You're right. Some of you, how many of you guys are married? You're the weirdos and the outliers. How many of you are the father of a child? Okay, you are a statistical minority. How many of you have more than one child? You're a total freak. Okay, and thank you. Because when everyone is wrong, you're the oddball if you're the one getting it right. And that's the world that we live in. And what happens today as well, if you don't have a father in the home, the odds of a child having mental and behavioral health issues is up 200%. If you don't have a father in the home, the odds of growing up in poverty go up 400%. If you don't have a father in the home, you're 500% more likely as a child to have a medical or emotional disorder. And what do we do with the little boys who manifest these issues? We medicate them.
Throw them in jail.
We say, you know what? There's something wrong with you. You're angry and acting up. You don't have a father, so instead we'll give you a pill. And then we'll put you in school, and then we'll cause you to question your gender. And then maybe we'll mutilate your genitalia. And then we'll make sure that you never grow up to be a strong man. And what we don't know what to do with the strength of boys, we don't know how to direct it, so we castrate it. And this is a cultural crisis. Number 6, men are not leading. Statistically, more women than men are in church. More women than men are in college, and more women than men are in the workforce. And so men are not leading, men are not launching, men are not marrying, men are not working, men are not fathering. It is a complete and total cultural crisis. Okay, so this is the problem. And I would tell you, if we fix the men will fix everything else. That's my thesis. That's the whole heart of Real Men. And you could look at it and say, well, how do we fix all these problems? If we have better men, those men won't cause these problems, and they will fix the problems caused by the bad men. That's what the good men will do. So we are here not to just complain, but to be the solution. You men matter. Your family matters. Your marriage matters. Your kids matter. Your legacy matters. For those of us who are now grandfathers, your grandkids, Mary, they matter, and your ministry matters, and you guys matter to us. And so here's what we ultimately need. We don't need bigger government, we need better men. And what always happens is the worse men increases the size of government. If the men do their job, you don't need nearly as much government. We live in a day when we don't need bigger government, we need better men.
Can anyone say amen? Can anyone say amen? Absolutely. Look, every meeting that you go to, Cincinnati, California, wherever, every meeting you go to, you need to hear this message, and it should be the primary message. Where is it? Where is it? And we might hear it from some women, maybe. What about the men being men? Speaking of which, in the second hour, we've got a man being a man, counting the cost. Folks, listen, the problem is with us in the USA. It's not the government. We don't need more of it. It isn't the teachers. It isn't more psychologists. My apologies. It is more fathers leading the family. Naturally, that's what we need. When you take that out, there's going to be issues. You can take the mother out of the home, there's still going to be issues, yes. By design, it is one man, one woman that needs to be a lifelong, committed, monogamous relationship. Your children watch what you do with your children. Go ahead. Then we got to get out of here.
It's Orwell and good. Play on words there. This is a library shelves at a Canadian school in Mississauga, Ontario, where the school board has decided to purge its library of all books published before 2008. Anything older than 15 years, gone, pulled, effectively burned, not literally burned, but just disposed of. The Arundel Secondary School in Mississauga pulled about half of the books off its library shelves. This includes all the Harry Potter novels, the Hunger Games series. It's part of a new equity-based book weeding, their words, equity-based book weeding, implemented by the Peel School District Board earlier this year. This reported by the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. The board insists it's following a wider directive from the Minister of Education to make learning resources more inclusive and reflective of the community, basically eliminating anything written before 2008. No connection to our past. Yeah, a library with empty shelves. That sounds really equitable and inclusive. Also purged classics like The Diary of a Young Girl by Anne Frank, iconic children's books like The Very Hungry Caterpillar. School board has been evasive, refusing to address the issue. After backlash, the education minister in Ontario, Stephen Leckie, finally weighed in, condemning the practice as offensive, illogical, and counterintuitive. He has since ordered the board to cease the book removals immediately, not to replace the books, just stop taking any more out. The larger issue here is the increasing trend of overcorrection in the name of equity, or wokeness, if you prefer. In other words, the erasing of history, culture, and of course, any kind of nuanced discourse. Topic number 2, the grocery tax is long.
Keeping you informed. This is Last Call with BJ Edwards.
Oh, yeah?
Whoa. That technology, AI is kind of running this machine.
I'm not going to apologize. Normally, I'm not a yeller and a screamer, but for some reason, this thing that happened in Nevada just got me all upset. It really does, about how we can avoid issues like this. And again, men need to take control of their families, of their own lives, to be honest with you. It's not always easy. We're given a certain set of circumstances, and it's kind of difficult at times, but that's okay. It's part of our leadership, and we have to control it. Hey, we've got a great guest for the second hour. I'm not going to yak too long. I'm going to bring him on, Dr. Sam Sigoloff, and I call him Major, and maybe you can correct me on that when you come in, brother. But he's a family medicine physician. Was a major in the U.S. Army, serving at Fort. Oh, you can pronounce it when you come on. That's at the W. Bliss Army Health Clinic. I was at Fort Bliss, Texas. I wonder if there's any relationship there. He was a medical director at the clinic who refused COVID vaccine in 2021, nor did he coerce or force his patients, servicemen, to take the vaccine. He did his best, giving informed consent, even though little was known about the vaccine at the time. Why don't you go ahead and bring Dr. Samuel on? Brother, welcome to Last Call.
Morning. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's our pleasure. It's our pleasure. Now, I want to get into your case. Is there any relationship between Fort Bliss, Texas, and the Bliss Army Health Center?
I don't know anything about the men, but the places are very different. So Fort Huachuca is where I am. Fort Bliss is in El Paso.
Okay. Are you still in the service?
No, sir. I got out on the 31st of August.
Okay. I'm still going to call you Major.
And I did not retire.
Okay. Can you hear me okay?
I did not retire, so I'm no longer a Major.
Okay. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Because we've had problems in the past with folks listening. As a medical director, you gave medical advice with regards to COVID. You're a doctor, so you're probably going to get to that sooner than I did. But when this first came out, I did a little research with the CDC, and I found out there was a lot of mixed information on the CDC. When they were talking about past, I was going to do a comparison between 2019 and 2020 with flu deaths. And I went to the CDC, and the 2019 was evidence was, it was assumed. It was not based on facts. And I scratched my head and I went, wait a minute, what? Yeah, they did not have real hard facts to base their figures on. And I'm going, how can I compare what's happening now to what happened then? Because we really don't know, according to the CDC. It was estimated what happened. So I'm going, well, I don't know, but I'm still running around with people with masks and gloves on. So I decided I wasn't going to wear a mask, but I was going to wear the gloves. Okay? Because I somehow I felt that was going to protect me. And then after a couple times, I went, you know what? I'm not going to wear the gloves anymore. And I got into the mood of not wearing masks, not wearing gloves. Of course, there was a lot of friction, and you can tell us about that. A lot of friction in doing that. But and I eventually did end up getting COVID, took ivermectin, bingo. A day later, I'm fine. So that's my personal experience with this. I want to get a little bit into your personal experience with this. Before I do that, what possessed you? How did you get to the position you're into? Family wise, did you come from a broken family? Was it a ideal family? You went to school to be a doctor, and why did you decide to go into the service, Dr. Sam?
So yeah, just call me Sam. Thank you so much for having me on. So my
Absolutely.
story is I grew up in a great family. My parents were great. I went to a private private middle school. You know, all of my schooling was at a private school. Went to private high school. I did Boy Scouts, and when I was in Boy Scouts, I got injured very badly. There was a rope that was lifting about 5,000 pounds, and it snapped the log it was tied to, hit me across the face. You know, broke my jaw, ripped a bunch of teeth out. That's a fake tooth in there, and ripped the corner of my mouth, and put me in ICU for 3 days. I was wired shut for 5 weeks, and that's that's how God gave me the drive to want to be a doctor, and because I wanted to help other people the way I was helped.
Yep.
And originally I wanted to be a surgeon, and so I went through undergrad and did ROTC because I felt like ROTC was the next extension of Boy Scouts. It's like, well, what is Boy Scouts getting you ready to be? A good citizen, yeah, but what about you know, you can see the military connection there. Okay, so let me do that.
Yeah.
My dad was in the Army. You know, all the men in my family had been in the military. I even had a great grandfather that died fighting for the North in the Civil War. So I mean, the tradition goes way back, and did ROTC. That paid for undergrad. Then, by the grace of God, I was got into med school and had the military pay for that. And that's when I discovered, you know, I don't want to be a surgeon because their life is rough. They're working, you know, 17 hours a day, and they rarely see their family. Many of them have been divorced multiple times and don't know their family. And so I thought, let me switch into family medicine. I think that's a good fit for me. And I went to Martin Army Community Hospital for residency at Fort Benning, and it was a great residency program. I was able to do just about everything because there was only one residency program there. So I came out of there the first person ever able to do colonoscopies coming out of Martin Army, and which is, you know, I did 105 colonoscopies as a family medicine resident, which is not an easy task. And then I went to my next duty station, was doing them there, went to the next duty station, and that brings us to Alaska. And that's right around the time that COVID started. And when COVID started, like a month or two before, I learned about a new way of eating that's really an old way of eating. It's how humans ate 10,000 years ago. And it's about eating animal products only and very little to no plant products. And I stumbled across it because I had problems with sleep. I had idiopathic hypersomnolence. It's like narcolepsy. And it helped control my narcolepsy. It helped keep me awake during the day. You know, it wasn't like in the movies where the guy just falls asleep uncontrollably, but it's where you're doing fine and then all of a sudden it feels like you've been up for 48 hours and then you're fine again. And when I started eating this way, it really corrected it. And then a month or two later, we go into COVID. And in Alaska in March, it's still below 0 temperatures every morning. There's snow on the ground. And I volunteered to work out in the tent that we had set up so that we could do COVID testing. And we had a PCR test early on because of one of the missions that we had. We had to send people to a remote site, and we didn't want to get those people who went to that remote site. We didn't want them to get ill because it was a very strategic defense position. That's all I'll say on that. And so I was testing everybody. Just about anybody had any possible reason, any symptom that could be. If you had 2 symptoms, I would test them. And after a month and a half of doing that, I had not a single positive test.
I'm sorry, what?
After a month and a half of testing everybody that I possibly could, like the symptoms are, oh, you coughed because you choked on your coffee this morning. Let me go ahead and test you. Oh, you don't think you can taste very well because your nose is a little plugged up. Well, let me test you. After testing everybody, after a month and a half of testing everybody that I possibly could, not a single positive COVID test came up. And so so the eating, that I kind of skipped over this, but it really changed my whole worldview, changing the eating, because it changed everything that I had ever been taught. And it made sense, right? Humans, what is the only food source available on every continent that humans live on in every season? Well, it's animal products, and it's high-fat diet. You know, if you had to, as most docs say, you have to eat this vegetable from this part of the world and this plant from that part of the world and this fruit from over there, well, you couldn't do that 100 years ago. It's impossible. You couldn't have, let's say, a pineapple and a banana and an orange in the same grocery store ripe at the same time 100 years ago.
They say if you're going to eat honey, you should do it from a local area.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
And so,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
I
was in a fog in a daze.
You're thinking more clearly because you're getting sleep. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was in a fog in a daze because It was just, it went against everything that I was taught. I remember someone in residency, a staff member saying, oh, you have to have carbs. Humans need carbs. But if you look up the word essential carbs, that term, it doesn't exist. Essential meaning you must intake it, you can't make it. There's essential fats and there's essential proteins. There is no essential carbs. And so that really took a huge brick out of the wall of my education and really made me think maybe they're wrong about some things. And so that led into the testing for a month and a half. It was a PCR test, if someone wants to know, polymerase chain reaction test. And those are, I've since learned a lot more about PCR tests and how they're not used for, they shouldn't be used for diagnosis. We were running them at like 41 cycles. They shouldn't be run more than 25 cycles. Every time you do a cycle, you double what you're looking for. So of course you're going to find what you're looking for if you double it enough. But even then, so I still wasn't getting positive tests. And then we flash forward about another year. Pardon?
That's amazing. What type of test did you use, Sam?
It was the PCR test, the polymerase chain. It was, I think it was BioFire was the name of the brand.
Okay, thanks.
And we got them early on because of the mission set that we had. And then we flash forward about about a year to the next March. And during all that time, there was all this chatter in the military about, oh, the shots will be mandatory someday. And every time I heard a commander say that, I'd say, sir, or a command sergeant major, I'd say, no, sir, do not say that. You don't know. That's undue command influence. And I started counseling patients and telling them, because I'd see mostly beneficiaries, so wives, children, retirees. I tell them, hey, someday this will become mandatory for your spouse, for your service member. You need to decide now, before we get to that point, what are you going to do? Do you want to get it or do you not want to get it? And if you don't want to get it, what can you withstand? Being read on someone's Excel spreadsheet list, that's not a big deal. If they make your life miserable, well, that might be a big deal. If they kick you out for it, that's a big deal. You need to think about these things before you get to that point so that you can be ready for that. And that's how I counsel patients. And part of the counseling too was look at the ingredients in this, in these shots. And this is probably March of 21, I think it was, where the CDC sent out a list of what was in there. This is sometime in 21. Could have been a little earlier, where they sent out a list of what's in these shots. And there was these compounds that were very, very long names. And you could condense it down to the letters DSPC and DSPE. So DSPC and DSPE. And so I looked those up. And those were lipid nanoparticles. So lipid means fat, nanoparticle means it's really small. They're lipid nanoparticles. And if you look at their safety data sheet that OSHA requires that these companies make, the safety data sheet says that they're not validated for human use. Their toxicology reports are classified. It says classified.
Amazing. Just absolutely amazing. So are you out of Alaska? Are you back in Arizona when you're doing this?
So I was stationed in Alaska at this point, and then it's time to move. So every 3 years or so, 2 or 3 years depending on the cycle, but it was 3 years and it was time to move again. So I interviewed at some places. I came to Fort Huachuca to be the medical director, working underneath a man that I've worked for before, and he liked how I worked for him. I was his medical director at a previous duty station, and he liked how I worked for him, and so he wanted me back again. So it was now July of 21. I moved to Fort Huachuca, Arizona, to be the medical director. And during this time, I'm in a online Facebook group for military members, mostly active duty Army, doctors only. And I got silenced in that group for, I think it was like a week or two, because of the discourse that I was causing. People were harassing me, yelling at me, making fun of me, but I was the one who was silenced for a week, just to give you an idea. And this was by a full bird colonel who silenced me, who is actually at headquarters command at Falls Church. So I mean, this is not some Joe Schmo who silenced me. This is not Facebook who silenced me. This is an active duty Army officer who said, what you're saying, Sigoloff, is inappropriate and you need to quit saying it. All I was saying was the things that were in the media at the time, the concerns about the shot, people forcing the shot, ivermectin, things like that.
Now, folks, I want to explain something to you. Being in the service is a little bit different than being out in public life. It's a pretty strict environment, and you are trained when you're given an order, you obey. You don't question. Okay, but I want you to understand the environment that Sam was in. And to step out in our environment is difficult. We'll double that for him stepping out in the military environment. I mean, we're talking about things like court martial. I mean, there's a lot of threats I'm sure that came your way, and I think we're going to take a quick break. We're going to break. I've got a. I want to update us in terms of what your current situation is, and then I've got a political fact item I want to read to our audience. And I think Myra wants to come in as well. B.J. Edwards, along Mr. Anderson. This is your last call. Hang in there, please.
Last call with B.J. Edwards. Real talk about real life.
Dr. Sam Sigoloff. And Sam, I want you to get into where you are currently. You started saying, wait a minute, something's off here. And if I don't do the right thing, people are going to get hurt. Is that a pretty fair assessment of where you were?
Very accurate assessment. And I even went so far as to tell patients so that they would feel comfortable. I would say, I'm never going to get it. The only way that I could ever feel that it's safe enough for me to take is to have 30 years of research. And at that point, it won't matter. And if they change one nucleotide on this ribonucleic acid chain that they're injecting into people, that is not messenger RNA. If you look at the literature, it says mRNA, but it has an asterisk next to it. And you go look at what that asterisk means. It does not mean messenger. It means modified nucleoside ribonucleic acid. They changed out the nucleotides to a nucleotide that humans can't digest, we can't break down. So we don't know how long it stays in humans. And if they change one of those little nucleotides, it's a new drug that does something different.
Amen. So where are you now? You've put your career, military, and probably otherwise at risk. Where are you today as a result of your trying to do the right thing and keeping your oath, your Hippocratic oath? Where are you today? What is your current status?
Currently, I'm out of the military completely. I've got my DD-214 in hand, and I couldn't be happier. August 31st was my last day in. Now, if we go back in time a bit, so that was July, and then in August 28th, August 24th of 2021 is when the SecDef, quote, mandated that all service members get an FDA, actually it technically said in the order, it said a DOD approved vaccine. And it took me about 1.5 years of reading that order to get my head wrapped around what he actually said. It's not an FDA approved vaccine. He ordered that they take a DOD approved vaccine. And the reason that's important is because lawyers pour over this documentation. And they don't say things like DOD when they mean FDA. And so service members were told, you take the DOD approved vaccine, or you can volunteer to take one of the other ones that aren't approved. And if you remember, like, Comirnaty was only approved for about a day. Anyhow, I wrote medical exemptions for service members that came to me. I wrote approximately 13 of them, unfortunately. I wish I could have written more. And one of those medical exemptions, they were all based on the lipid nanoparticle not being validated for human use and how it's basically poison, in layman's terms, and how it shouldn't be injected into anyone, let alone service members who are defending our country. That one of those exemptions got sent to a colonel who's in charge of his unit. That unit sent it into my hospital commander. My hospital commander said, oh, he's not supposed to be doing that. And then she put me in summary suspension in September of 21.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. Okay. The quote is, figures don't lie, but liars do figure. Military data from 2021 show military members experience spikes of 300% in miscarriages, almost 300% in cancer diagnosis, and 1,000% in neurological issues. Fact checked, right? Numbers were based.
Right?
Numbers were based. Yes, you're right. Numbers were based on faulty data. Military spokesperson says. So what they're going to tell you is, when we counted it back then, we didn't do it right. When we're counting it now, we're doing it right. We're back to the CDC sort of thing. Your comments, please.
Yeah, well, if that's DMED data, the Defense Military Epidemiologic Database, which it sounds like it is,
yes,
I actually helped blow the whistle on that. So this was probably January or December of 21, 22, after I put in my qualified resignation and they refused it. Then I got a call from Lieutenant Colonel Long, and she said, Sigoloff, something's wrong. I can't be doing this right. Get out your computer, look up this database. And sure enough, those same numbers that you're seeing, 1,000% increase, 300% increase in that. And it was terrifying. And so we got this information together and we prepared a report to give to Thomas Renz, and he went to DC and he reported this at the Senator Ron Johnson roundtable hearing. And he mentioned the three of our names. It was Lieutenant Colonel Pete Chambers, now retired, and Lieutenant Colonel, and they're all doctors, and Teresa Long, and my name. And we blew the whistle on this. And then we've all been retaliated against since then. And Senator Ron Johnson wrote a letter to the Secretary of Defense saying, this is a huge problem. He listed all of the major issues, 1,000% increase in blood pressure and neurologic issues and, testicular cancer, ovarian cancer, miscarriages, the list goes on and on. And he said, Senator Ron Johnson said to the Secretary of Defense in this letter, don't retaliate against these people and preserve this information. Do not change any of it. Within a week, there was a war that started in Ukraine. And so everyone looked over here when right here, they took down the entire database, took it down, changed every number and put it back up. So,
oh man. Yeah.
So if you follow this analogy where you've got one guy who is looking over a ridgeline and he sees 100,000 enemy troops down there and he goes back to his platoon and he says, hey, there's no one there. Don't worry about it. What would you call that scout?
I'd call him out. Go ahead.
A traitor, aiding and abetting the enemy. And if it takes more than one person, then it's conspiracy to commit treason.
Ooh. We need to get a justice system. By the way, you said you got a discharge, your DD 214. Was that an honorable discharge?
Yes, sir. It was an honorable discharge. Surprisingly, praise God that it was.
And we've had Pete on our show before. Pete's a good man.
He's a good guy. I like him.
You're really appreciated. I mean, you honest to God are really appreciated. And you'd say that I'm going to bring Meyer on here shortly because I'm going to tell you that right now, basically all America has is a prayer. There's good gentlemen like you that are standing up, and other folks that are standing up, but they're catching this same. And I talked about it early on. He who controls the information controls the world. You're presenting the truth out there, but it's not getting posted. Nobody can see it. All they can see is, oh, here's a guy that's going against the government, and the government is good, so this guy is bad. That's all they hear about our government. How good the things you hear about a former vice president who's sitting in the White House right now. The things that you hear, the excuses. It just drives me crazy when I hear, whoa, what? That isn't all the truth. And then somebody like you you've probably saved countless lives because of your belief in the Hippocratic Oath and believe in right and wrong. It's just absolute. It's commendable, but we need. You cannot do this alone, sir. You do need help. Myra, why don't you come in? I got her.
Good morning. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Edwards and Mr. Anderson, and to everybody allowing me to do this. Dr. Samuel, I found some research that it has to do with the type of environment you are, and you will think, well, it's second nature. It makes sense, but it has been proven, and I just would like to mention it. And welcome to Last Call, by the way. It's an honor and pleasure to meet you. There is a study done by Sofja et al. In 2018, and it talks about friendly home and inhabitants, morality, and mutual relationships, frontiers in psychology. And the framework of the studies just emphasizes the interplay between people and their environments. And in environments where there's morals like you brought, and there's friendship, there's a reciprocal relationship, and the friendlier the home, the higher the inhabitants' moral motives and level, and vice versa. The higher the person moral motives level, and the more positive the home image. And you trying to change this environment, this very negative environment where you are, and I'm so glad you're out of it, and the Lord had protected you all along. And there's a research in the public domain. It's from National Library of Medicine, and Jonathan Kohati et al. Writes something very interesting. Mental health problems increased during the COVID-19 pandemic. The knowledge that one is less at risk after being vaccinated may alleviate the stress. So what are they trying to prove? We're going to give you the shot just because it helps you psychologically.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Brother Martin, he's full of the Holy Spirit, and he sent me a Bible verse that is very appropriate, and I'm just so grateful that I'm able to read it. Thank you, Martin. Proverbs 3:1-8, and this is the English Standard Version. My son, do not forget my teachings. Uh, But let your heart keep my commandments, for length of days and years of life and peace they will add to you. Let not steadfast love and faithfulness forsake you. Bind them around your neck. Write them on the tablet of your heart, so you will find favor and good sources in sight of God and man. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not lean on your own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he will make straight your paths. Do not be wise in your own eyes, for the Lord, and turn away from evil. It will be healing to your flesh and refreshment to your bones. Hallelujah.
Thank you, Myra.
Amen.
Thank you,
Thank
Myra.
you.
We have a lot of Christians that listen to this show, Sam. I guess
Yeah.
I guess I should be apologetic about that, right? No.
No, don't be. No, never.
I love it. I love it. We're gonna take a break, and after the break, I'm gonna bring another major in, and I got to ask you a question. Are you 21 or 22 years old?
Me?
Yeah, you. I'm going to get on this all meat diet if this is what it does to you. You can get
Look at
sleep.
All these grays are from residency,
Yeah.
delivering babies.
Yeah. Okay. Hey, when we come back, Sam will join us, and I do want to get an update in terms of where you are with regards to lawsuits, what you're doing, if you can talk about that. And
Oh yeah, I can talk about anything. I'm out of the Army now.
And maybe how things did end. You can.
Faith, discussion, and so much more. Last Call with BJ Edwards.
And we're on with Dr. Doogie Howser. I'm sorry. We're on with Sam. You do look very, very young. Very, very young. You wore your battle scars very well. The service was it a mutual agreement? You couldn't get along with them, they couldn't get along with you, so we're going to end it. Is that pretty much where we're at?
That's pretty much it. I tried to get out early a few times, and they refused. And I see why God kept me in. He had more work for me to do. And even the fact that when I finally was allowed to get out, they said, "Oh, you're less than 6 months out. You have to either fill out this really long form and write a multi-page essay as to why you missed the deadline, or you can just stay in longer." So I said, "Oh, well, that makes it easy. I'll stay in longer and get paid longer because I am under investigation in Texas for my license still." So I did that, and that worked out perfect to where by the time I was out and by the time the Texas investigation ended, it was the same month. So I've only gone 1 month without pay, and I just signed a contract to start working in Arizona because I received my Arizona medical license just about 2 weeks ago, or a week ago. And so, I mean, God is good. God is really good.
Yes. That is so good to hear. So you're suing the Department of Defense? Is that correct?
Yes, sir. So I'm suing the Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of the Army, and Commanding General, previous commander at Fort Huachuca. He's no longer there anymore. And I'm suing them for a myriad of reasons. You can boil it down to lack of due process, so Fifth Amendment violation, and Whistleblower Protection Act violations.
Amazing. I'm going to bring another major in. I've got him. Major Tom Haviland. Welcome back to Last Call, sir. And I think you two may know each other. And
we sure do.
And I hope,
yes, sir. Good to see you again.
Sam had me on his podcast a few months ago, and I just want to salute you, Sam, for what you've done. You know, I did something similar as a defense contractor. It was an easier decision for me because I already was drawing my retired major's Air Force salary. I've been in the service for 20 years. I was within 1 year of drawing Social Security. I was 61 at the time. I made my decision in October of 2021 to stand up and say no against the jabs and tell off an Air Force 3-star Air Force general that I'm not taking the jab. This is unethical. You're doing it wrong. So I just want to salute you, Sam, because the environment you were in was much more difficult. Not having that 20 years in yet, still being active duty. You took a tremendous risk of your retirement benefits being taken away from you completely. And I salute you for putting that on the line, because you had more thoughtfulness about the care and treatment for the military members and their family that you were taking care of. And you knew there was something that was not just wrong and ineffective about these shots. There was something dangerous about them as well. And you put that above even your own financial benefits. So good on you, Sam. God sees that. He sees what you did, and he's rewarding you now for the brave decisions that you made. My question to you, Sam, is I know you were writing exemptions for military members to have them not have to take the jab. Were those exemptions actually, did they follow through, or were they overturned by the military people, and do those people still have to wind up getting shots?
That's a great question. And it's almost like I paid you to ask that question, because I think you may know the answer to this. But no, so when I was suspended on September 13th of 2021. On the 9th of September, my hospital commander ordered me to retract all of my medical exemptions. She's a registered nurse, so obviously she's been educated in medicine and understands how medicine works, and she's ready to take on the mantle of practicing medicine without a license. Oh, wait, no, she's not. She's a registered nurse. She's not even privileged to practice nursing at the institution that she's at. Right. And so she ordered me to retract all my medical exemptions. And so me being the fine, upstanding citizen with the rebel inside of me, I called them all, and I told them, despite my 9 years clinical experience, despite my opinion not changing, I've been given a military order to retract your medical exemption. And I tell them, you understand what I'm saying. Read between the lines. My opinion has not changed. I do not believe you should get this, and I think it would be a danger to your health if you got it. And then the very next day, that same nurse, not even a nurse practitioner, a registered nurse, and this is not a dig against nurses. My wife is a nurse. Nurses are great when they stay in their lane, just like doctors are great when I don't do nursing things, right? So I mean, there's equal here. But she put out a memo, a military order, where she says she reviewed the data on ivermectin, and she made the decision that it was now not allowed. She banned the off-label use of prescribing ivermectin at our institution. This is at a time when TRICARE, so the insurance that covers the military, still did not require prior authorization for ivermectin, meaning I can prescribe it no matter what anyone says. But TRICARE covered it and paid for it. Even if TRICARE didn't cover it, because they didn't cover hydroxychloroquine, which I did prescribe previous to that, the patient would go, okay, they take the hand script, or I'd call it in somewhere, and they pay $20 cash or however much it costs. And they were happy with that because it helped them significantly. But here she said no one is allowed to even prescribe it. And found out a year later that she actually went so far as to call the pharmacist on post and prevent my prescribed medications from getting to the patient.
Wow.
She didn't
If
get
anyone died of COVID during that time period, when she banned the off-label use, she is directly responsible for their death because she was practicing medicine without a license. And I went to the local police. I went to the local sheriff. I went to the local military police. I went to, everyone said, oh, we'll get JAG involved. So I went to JAG, even though when someone's murdered, you don't send in the lawyers, you send in the police to investigate. Anyhow, I went to JAG. They said, oh, well, yeah, there's nothing we can do about that. I called IG. They didn't care. I called Texas Attorney General because she has a registered nurse license in Texas. I called the Texas Medical Board, the Texas Nursing Board, Arizona Medical Board, Arizona Nursing Board, Arizona AG. Nobody cared. I finally went to CID, which is the Army's equivalent of FBI. Mm-hmm. They reported me back to the acting commander because that particular commander was on training or something. And the acting commander made me write an essay, because I guess I'm in high school, about multiple things to include Article 94. Well, Article 94 is mutiny and sedition, and that comes with a max penalty of death. This is a threat against me for trying to report someone breaking the law. And if you look up practicing medicine without a license, you'll find many case reports of news stories of FBI kicking someone's door down and coming in with guns drawn because they're practicing medicine without a license. And here, nobody cared.
Wow. Sinister stuff, Sam. People were just all bought into the mainstream narrative, and kowtowing. You know, I saw that was the thing that disappointed me the most is when I did send that email out to the entire base. Almost nobody else stood. All the senior officers, all the colonels, all the generals, they were all just kowtowing to what the orders they were being given with, and they didn't realize, I don't think at the time, or maybe they did, that they were sentencing people to mandate them to take these experimental injections that could severely physically damage them or even kill them. And they went ahead and they did it anyways, just to save their own skin. So once again, I just want to thank you, Sam, for being one of those rare people, very rare people that stood up and said, no, this is not right. Well done.
Well, I just sent a link in the chat, and I hope everyone can get this, but go check out my podcast on Rumble. It's called After Hours with Dr. Sigoloff. And while I was suspended and relegated to my office where I couldn't do anything, but I couldn't see patients for my last 2 years in the military. I couldn't see patients. But when I was first suspended, I started digging into the research, and that link, it's the episode number 33 that I did. And it's where I show you using public source documentation, how the shot itself is a bioweapon. And the logic I use behind that is these documents that we receive from Pfizer through FOIA, Freedom of Information Act, most of them came from Judicial Watch. You look at the redaction codes. Every time they redact something, they have to tell you why they redact it. They don't tell you what's underneath it, but they tell you why. And there's a little code there, and it says B4, Bravo 4. And you go look at the archive system and what these different redaction codes mean. And I show you this. I show you all the documents in this video. And to expose the information underneath this redaction code would inhibit the application of a state-of-the-art U.S. weapons system.
Wow. And I know Sasha Latapova completely agrees with you. And there's other people out there that are looking into the same military DOD connection. And it makes me ashamed of actually being a service member for all those years and what the DOD and DARPA and some of these organizations have done in this area. So, good on you for exposing it.
And I mean, so even to have EUA, and I explained this in that video, to have the EUA moniker, emergency use authorization, you first must have an emergency. Well, to be able to get that moniker of emergency, to make that declaration, there's 4 for the registry, but all the government documents only have 3 different criteria, because that 4th one in the Federal Registry it's not really anything. But in the military documents, it has these 3 things, and it's a chemical, radiologic, biologic, or nuclear attack, CBRN, CBRN, chemical, biologic, radiologic, or nuclear attack against U.S. citizens on U.S. soil, U.S. citizens on foreign soil, or against the military.
You know, you two are going to get
And
me
so-
thrown off the air. You know that. Huh? Yeah,
Hopefully you're not on YouTube.
Really, seriously. Well, welcome to our last show, folks.
This is the last call.
Yeah, and I'm thinking. Look, the military
Sorry.
really wanted to fire you. They wanted to fire you so bad because you were staying on such solid ground. They couldn't, and now instead of you tiptoeing away and saying I got away with it, you're back in their face. You're going, no, this is wrong. This is wrong. Thanks, Tom. I want to explain something to you, we're showing the link for your show. Courage is contagious, folks. That's what we're trying. That's what we're trying. We're trying to let you know that there are people out there that are doing things and have gotten away with it. Okay. I think in your case, Sam, you came from an environment where you had the truth instilled in you early on in the family. You knew the difference between right and wrong. And when you go out into the world and you don't see that, it bothers you. I came from just the opposite. I was in an environment where it was just the opposite of what you're talking about. Everything was helter-skelter. And I remember one thing, that when I was growing up, my mom and dad, and they always fought, and I'm not talking just about verbally, they always fought. And when we would go to a family reunion, it would be like Mr. and Mrs. Perfect. And I'm going like, don't you understand? They did not know what we were going through as children. So I think that my drive for righteousness comes from the family, but in a different way, a more negative way as well than yours. But I love the fact that you just can't let and it's, by the way, you want a doctor like this. Okay. You want a doctor like this, folks, that is going to tell you what you need to hear when you need to hear it, because it's best for you and the doctor. It's best for you and this individual who's standing up to this insanity that living in today, this 1984 insanity, and saying, no, stop, no more. I'm done. Go ahead.
Sorry if this is your last broadcast. I didn't mean to go down the bioweapon trail, but there's no other way to go with this. And
you can stay on,
and I think one thing that's really important is that so many doctors in this field who are on this, Truth for Health field, they talk about the mRNA, and they failed to mention, many of them failed to mention that it's modified nucleoside ribonucleic acid. But they say the mRNA is the problem, and the mRNA is the problem. And that's all you got to look at is just look at the mRNA, because that's the problem. It's a red herring. It's 50% or less of the problem, because they've looked at some of these vials and they found no mRNA and no evidence of mRNA being in there, but they have found the lipid nanoparticle, which is the bioweapon. And they're taking, I think it's Novavax, which is a normal vaccine. It's the traditional vaccine. And in the ingredients list, they just say that the ingredients are cholesterol. Well, how were these lipid nanoparticles described? They're described as cholesterol. So this is where the listener, the viewer, needs to be discerning and say, perhaps this is a time in my life I can't trust medicine anymore at all, and I will never have a needle touch my body again, even for lidocaine.
Amazing.
I completely agree with you, by the way, Sam. There's a problem with both the mRNA portion and the lipid nanoparticle delivery system. I would love to see a moratorium placed on both by our Congress, but as you know, they're paid off by Big Pharma. There's 2 or 3 lobbyists for every single member of Congress. And I don't expect our FDA and CDC are captured as well. So I always tell people when I go on podcasts is you, the citizen, have to be the last line of defense. You're the only one standing between you and these vaccines. So don't take them. Say no. Don't comply. That's my message to Americans. And the good news is a lot of Americans are getting it, even though 80% of American adults did get the first 2 jabs at least. Only 20% of American adults over the age of 18, according to the CDC, took the latest Omicron bivalent booster from last fall, from September of 2022. So I'm suspecting that very few will take this new booster that's coming out this fall. I'm hopeful that very few will take it. And I think that Americans are starting to get the picture. But we've got to keep sending the message out there until people get it and decide that nobody's going to get any more of these jabs.
Hey, Tom, we're going to take a break, fellas, and then going to bring Martin in. And I just got a notice from our news staff that PolitiFact has just put out a bulletin that with a thumbs down with this program today.
Sorry, it is the last of the last calls.
BJ, BJ Edwards along, Mr. Anderson. This is your last call.
Keeping you informed. This is Last Call with BJ Edwards.
That last comment is hoorah. Go for it.
Dr. Sigoloff, just bless you. I mean, you have a backbone of steel, sir, and I'm so proud to be on the same screen here with BJ Edwards' last call with you, sir, and another backbone of steel, Major Tom Havlin. I don't know if Mr. Anderson can bring up my shared screen, but what it is it's a photocopy of my brother Christopher's autopsy report that was performed by Dr. Jill Roman in Douglas County, Colorado, where my dear brother lived. And as you can see listed in the death circumstances, I've got it highlighted. It shows the COVID-19 vaccination times to Pfizer. And also, when you read through his report, doctor, you see that he suffered swelling of the heart, cardiac hypertrophy was listed in his cardio portion of this autopsy report. But what really set me back was the size of the blood clotting, doctor, that was in my brother's left basal ganglia. It was basically the size of one of those pink erasers that we carried in our school boxes at school that they found in his brain, sir. And so wow. I just want folks to know who's watching Last Call that this doctor and Major Tom Havlin are speaking truth. This is really happening, and we really need to warn people. And as a Christian, doctor, I warn people whenever, wherever I can, because how they're pressing, how the media is pressing that these are safe and effective. These are safe and effective. We've got another variant, so get the new vaccine. I heard the New York governor say that this isn't a booster. This is a whole new vaccine. So go out and get this new vaccine. And doctor, my heart breaks, especially when I see the needles going into the arms of little tiny children. Yeah. And I just keep flashing back to the CDC statement in 2020 that said up to 98% of people who contract COVID-19 can recover without even hospitalization. That came straight from the CDC in 2020. And it's amazing how they just keep, I guess they don't think that people like me exist where we remember things that were told to us in the media back when it was all taking place. So I just want to thank you, sir. I want to thank Major Tom Havlin for all the research and the advocacy that he's doing, and BJ Edwards for allowing this kind of information to be promoted, because people need to know this. People need to know this. Thanks, BJ.
Yeah, brother. Sam, we have an incredible listening audience. We really do, and they are doers. We're not large, but we are doers, and you can tell by the conversations you're having with these people that they've kind of been there and done that, and they know what's going on there, and they're not going to be fooled, and they are in the game. They are definitely in the game, and that's so important. How can we promote you, what you're doing? How can we help you?
Well, if you want to join me in this fight, because suing the Secretary of Defense, defending my good name, trying to keep my license, all this has cost quite a bit. I've spent over $120,000 in legal fees thus far. At least I've got a job now, which I'll start on October the 1st. So that'll be helpful. But if anyone's interested in help supporting me, joining my fight, and the fight is to stop all the Whistleblower Protection Act violations, to stop the chilling effect for doctors. Because if they are able to do what they've tried to do to me and they can get away with it, then no doctor will ever speak the truth ever, anywhere, in any situation, whether it be in the military or in private life. They won't be able to, and they'll be like, oh, I saw what happened to Sigoloff. I'm not doing that. He lost everything.
Yep.
So the way to help there is with my Give, Send, Go. We've got lots of, if you're not able to give money at this time, because I understand it's awful. The inflation is horrendous right now. Give us prayers. Helps share this story around. But that's Give, Send, Go. Just look up Sigoloff.
Steve Deace, by the way, and Daniel Horowitz have documented Sam's journey in this book, The Rise of the Fourth Reich. And it's in chapter 3 is completely devoted to Sam and his story. So, yeah, we've got people on a national level that understand what's going on here, and they think it's important enough to support Sam and what he's doing. And like you said, if we don't punish the tyrants, they're going to do it again. We've got to discourage these people from doing this, and the best way to do that is to sue them, is to punish them legally for what they've done to us. That's the only way that we have, the only tool we have to really stop them from doing it again. So,
I'm not going to disagree with that. Go ahead. Well, Sam, I want to ask you a quick question.
And God's put me.
Have you tried Pacific Justice Institute or Liberty Council or those organizations to help support you?
I have received a $10,000 grant from Truth for Health Foundation. I haven't tried some of those other ones. I did try Barnes, but I don't know if it got into his inner circle to actually see my case. There was one of my lawyers was talking to, I can't remember the name of the group, but they thought it was a freedom of speech issue because I was actually given by that same nurse commander said, Sigoloff, you're not allowed to talk about COVID-19 vaccine or virus during the duty day and in uniform. Well, that's an unlawful order, and it's a clear violation of my First Amendment right, because it has nothing to do with military service. Therefore, it is not a lawful order, which I am duty bound to disobey if it's not a lawful order.
Yes, sir. Correct. Amen.
Now, because of what's happened in Apter versus, I think it's FDA, and how the FDA lawyer recently said, oh, well, the FDA never said you couldn't use ivermectin. That may open up them to put me in a position where I may be able to sue them because I was prevented by government officials from giving ivermectin, a life-saving and very safe medication. With the lethal dose 50, so LD 50, meaning if we gave this to a group of people, it would kill half of them. That LD 50 is 25 milligrams per kilogram. So that's getting into dosages where someone's having to eat a kilo of this or more.
Wow.
And it's safe.
Well, co-host Tom Haviland, any last minute questions? And I appreciate your help. I appreciate all of your help. Again, this is not about BJ Edwards or Mr. Anderson. This is about all of us. And if you noticed this morning, we have people pitching in and making this program. I'm not making it alone. It's people pitching, including our guests, people pitching in, and courage is courageous, folks. It is. Maybe you still like it. Maybe you're afraid to do it, but it's still, jump in, the water's fine. Yeah. There's going to be a little wind every now and then, but that's going to help. I make the statement that when I win, I don't learn a whole lot, but when I lose, I learn a lot, and God loves me enough to let me lose about all the time, but that's okay. It's really, really, I believe, helped me become more knowledgeable of myself, of my creator, and be a better person.
My last statement is we need more men like Sam Sigoloff.
Amen.
We need more courageous people that'll step out and do what's right because it is right, regardless of whether it goes against what everybody else is saying or telling you to do. If you have the courage of your convictions to do what is right, God will be with you.
Yep.
So Sam, God is with you. You're doing the right thing. I'm glad you're pursuing the legal challenges against these people who did the wrong thing. And good luck to you. And I hope you get a win. And
I'd love to have you on the program again, Sam, but obviously this is our last program. So yeah, I'm gonna let you close us out. We got a couple 3 minutes, Sam. Any closing comments you want to make?
No, and if you weren't called for this fight, because there's very few who are called for the exact fight that I'm in, that's okay. Fight where you're called to be. Wherever God's put you, He's put you in a unique position to educate those around you, to actually to perhaps have a fight similar to mine, but don't feel bad if you're not in this position. Like when was it Moses, when they were fighting someone, he was, every time he'd raise up his arms, they start winning the fight. Every time he'd lower his arms, they start losing. So what did they do? They came alongside of him and held his arms up until they won the battle.
Amen. And the biggest fights this day and age are in the families. I don't know what kind of rough waves you've gotten because of what you've done. I'm sure there's probably one or two people in the family that have gone, yeah, maybe you shouldn't do that. That's not really a smart thing to do. I'm sure Tom got that. I get it all the time. Mr. Anderson. But it's and that's the tough one. That's hitting below the belt. When it comes from the family, that's the toughest one to get through. Is that not true?
I've been blessed beyond belief, and God has provided me with a nuclear family that has just been incredible through this whole thing, and an extended family that if anybody's had a problem, they haven't talked to me because they just haven't. They've been too upset to talk to me, and so it hasn't been an issue. But my folks are great. Just everyone's been good about this. My brother's been great about it. They've been very supportive. But my nuclear family, it would be impossible to do this and come home and fight and have that fight continue when I get home. And what's been great is my wife and my kids, they've been on board. My wife is like, I'm not going to let my best friend get injured by this and killed and taken away from our children. So she's had my back 110% the whole time. And it's been amazing.
Amen to that. You're a blessed man, Sam. Well done.
Wow.
Thank
Wow.
you.
By the way, Sam, that's natural family. That's not nuclear family.
Oh. I guess we're not blowing up, right?
Yeah. I really appreciate it. God bless, Godspeed. Well, I'll check with PJI. I know a few people there, and maybe the Liberty Council that boy, this looks like something that they should jump into, and really, I can't see why they wouldn't. But again, I'm not in their shoes, but I'll definitely try to do that. Now, I don't know whether that would offend your lawyers that you currently have, or whether they need that or want that. So maybe we should talk about
I could talk with my lawyers. I think he'd be open to any help to kind of help drive the cost down a bit, because he actually feels he's a wonderful man, and he feels bad that he has to charge so much, but he works for a company that he can't change his price per hour. And he's been phenomenal. I literally prayed to God, I need a lawyer with a high-rise building filled with lawyers and paralegals, and within a week I received exactly that, who keeps getting wins against the military every time I turn around. And so this is exactly the man that God has put in my life to help me with this fight.
Dr. Sam, thank you very much for your service in and out, officially and unofficially. You're very much appreciated, brother. And I'm not worried about the comments today. I love what we talked about today. I love the information that was out today, because it needs to get out now. Stat. Again, thank you very much, brother. God bless you. After the show, if you want to stick around, Tom will be here, and Martin, if you want to spend a little time with them in the chat afterwards. Hey, we got to close this up, don't we, Mr. Anderson?
I think so.
All right. Hey, you're listening to BJ Edwards and Mr. Anderson. This is your last call, folks. If you see a need, trust me, that's your calling. It doesn't have to be what we're talking about today, but for heaven's sakes, it's God is telling you something. Go for it. Do not hesitate. BJ Edwards along, Mr. Anderson. This has been your last call.
Join us next week for Last Call with BJ Edwards.